Hello, welcome to my part 2 video on modeling tools with Blender. I'm going to go through some more advanced tools and techniques we can use to help model mesh objects for fun, for games, for live applications, for whatever we need. So, first thing I want to talk about, last time I just did a generic sword. This time I want to do a specific one. So instead of just going by my own intuition on designing that blade, let's try to make something a bit more specific. So hop over to your Google image search and search for something that you find interesting. I'm going to go with the Soul Reaver blade since it hasn't been used in games in a while, although it's still one of my favorite series of all time. And a lot of people have made fan versions of it. In fact, even real versions of it, it looks like in the one. Just did a quick search for Soul Reaver sword. I found a reference in Profile. Using reference images for modeling is a standard technique. In particular, when you do character modeling, you'll oftentimes have character turnarounds. So let me just quickly save this image. Actually, you know what? Oh no, I've gone down the rabbit hole. That's the image. Save image as. It's doing the WebP crap. I don't want WebP. I don't need any particular image. I'll just do the print screen and just grab an image on it. But now to give you an example of what I mean by character turnaround, you can see when a character is drawn in scale, in rotation, at the very minimum, you probably want a front and side view of an image. Sometimes the artist will go a bit further to give you an idea of what the additional depths there may be. Now, keep in mind that no matter how good a character turnaround is, it's still going to be up to you to interpret the in-between of the front and the side. You can't just do a cut and extrude based on the outline. Getting a little bit ahead of myself. We're not doing characters just yet. Let me go back to Blender now. What I want to do is go to my front view, which I believe is this one. Yes, I like to use Y as the front, Z is up. So I am going to add an image as a background image. What that's going to do is let me to search through what I've made recently. I have screenshots, and let me go by timestamp, the one I just made. There we are. And I've got this image that only shows up when I'm in that profile view. And there's some information that we can control about this object. I believe, which panel is it? Object properties. All right, there's the image information. The source is from an image. We can set opacity, so I don't have to have it completely flat. I can say, have it blend in with my background a little bit. So I've got 50% so I can see through it a little bit as I'm working. And right now it shows an only orthogonal, but I can also add perspective and that'll show up all over the place, but it can only show the image from the front. If I want to turn that off, I will only see it in my orthogonal view face on what it lines up with. If I had a side view, I would do this, repeat the exact same process and try to make sure that they lined up here as a cross section. When I start doing character tutorials, I'll show you that process a bit more accurately. But this is a pretty simple flat image, so I'm just going to go with this one. I'm going to scale it up a bit. I like to work on a larger scale and then scale it down as I need for whatever project it is that I'm working on. All right, now let's begin modeling the Soul Reaver. Actually, we do want to offset this just a little bit. Kind of want to line it up on center as best I can. All right, with nothing selected, top-down view, I'm going to add mesh. And first thing I want to do is model go with a plane. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate in edit mode. I'm going to rotate that forward. And I can see the plane there. What I want to do is start modeling the blade of the reaver here. And remember to toggle back and forth. I believe for you all, that's Control Spacebar. For my old input, it's Shift Spacebar. Same thing. And then the Z will call up the context menu where you can hit one of these hotkeys here to go into wireframe or solid view. All right, I'm just going to start moving the vertices to the shape of the blade. And just selecting one vertex at a time. And I'm not even sure I like that one there. Let's go a little bit fancier here. Now here is a nice convenience tool. If you control, when you have two or more, or one, or whatever you want to work with, you can quick extrude by holding Control and clicking. Oh, I did something wrong. I didn't wait for it to load. Control click, Control click, Control click, and I can quickly just add a whole bunch of geometry to start working with, and it just extrudes to my mouse. Now what I can do, that I've got some geometry to work with, is move the vertices to about where I want them to be. Now here's an example where between these, I kind of want one more line. Here's another tool I'm going to introduce called Loop Cut. Control R will allow me to cut a face, but keep the topology. So what that means is that the plane, or the rectangle that's defined by, or the quad that's defined by these four vertices, is not going to change. It's going to be kept in the same shape. All I'm going to do is then bisect. I'm going to cut this line in half and this line in half and add another line and connect them. So when I left click there, I now go into, now where do I want this to lie? I can hold Control and I can snap this. You can see there's a little highlight changing to show me where I'm at the midpoint, because oftentimes we want the midpoint. And right click will cancel the move, and then Control Z will undo. Control R to loop cut, left click to confirm the cut position, and now I have a little bit more geometry to work with. I can hug that curve a little bit nicer. I'm going to do the same thing here. Control R, loop cut. Looks like a chip has been taken out of the one. And just try to move the vertices so it does the best job of mapping the shape and the curve of what we're trying to accomplish here. All right, and we're going to keep going down the line and repeating this process. If I want more than one cut at the same time, I can Control R. And notice as I move my mouse, it chooses which loop to cut. Over here, it's going to bisect this and then it project down all the other parallel within the geometry lines to cut. This is one of the reasons why working with quads works better than triangles. With triangles, it breaks the loop. But with quads, the loop can, or in this case, a strip can continue. But if I want more than one at once, I can scroll my mouse wheel and add additional cuts to happen. So I can add a whole lot of geometry at once if I wanted to. I don't, but I'm going to probably add 2 here. And again, I can slide where I want the cut to happen and then start working with the new geometry that we've added to the system. There is a mindset that you do not want to add more vertices and edges and faces than you need. So it's better to start small and add complexity than rather than just adding a whole lot of vertices that you may end up not needing, and then you have a harder time cleaning it up. So it's always better to start from less geometry, in my opinion, especially if your ultimate goal is a live application, like a video game or a VR simulation. to minimize that, because every vertex, every triangle is more work for the GPU to process, which means the less can be done in the live application. Just going to leave that one there like that. All right, so there is my slow river blade. And then with the two new tools, the click to extrude and the loop cut. But let's take a look at how we can also use the additional modifiers. So let me go over to my modifiers tab, the wrench. I'm going to once again add the mirror modifier to this project. Mirror, here we go. And it chose, which actually kind of looks neat. What's happening? What's happening? Okay. Basically made it into a helix. That's actually not what I want. I want to mirror it front to back. So instead of mirroring along the x-axis here, I want to mirror around the y-axis and not the x-axis. So now I'm mirroring front to back. Actually, let me turn it off for a second. Before I even do that, let me select everything. Look at my side view. And I want to extrude out. Now I'm going to add that modifier back, the mirror modifier, in the y direction. And we add the whole axis to it. So now I've got that going on. And now let me show you another tool that can be handy. This is in the vertex context menu. I want to smooth the vertices. I think I might have shown that off at the last one, but it's worth showing again. Smooth the vertices. What that's going to do is just take the average positions of nearby vertices and try to just make the differences between the ones I have selected and its nearby vertices a little less different. If you're using the old style input, Control W calls up that, no, Shift W, no, W calls up that menu. Have the vertex context menu. And that works, I believe, only when I'm in this mode. If I'm in edge select mode, so just another note here, vertex select, edge select, face select. You can see here I can select different faces all at once. With this mode, I can select different edges all at once. And then and then W calls up the edge context menu. There's different things we can do with the edges here. All right. I'm going to go back to vertex select since I still want to work with vertices. Sometimes it's easier to work with vertices. Sometimes it's easier to work with faces. So I just showed you loop cut. Now I'd like to show you loop select. So I'm going to, nope, not that one. Make sure I have the view here. There we are. Let me see what that command is. So if you hold Alt and select, you'll be able to select an entire loop of edges, or a continuous line of edges. Now this last one, it can't quite figure out that it's supposed to loop around. But if I hold Shift and Alt and right click, it'll add to the selection. And now I've got the entire center line of this selected. And inside this, I have a plane that I'm now no longer ever going to see. That plane is inside the convex hull. So I want to delete it. So X, and what I want to delete is not the vertices, not the edges. I want to delete the faces that are selected by this. So their vertices are the same. You'll now notice that the cross lines no longer exist. And if I move the camera inside the hull, it is now empty along the center line. Let me go back to my modifier and make sure I still have clipping on, because I want to now treat this as if it is a symmetrical front to back hull. If I wanted to get accurate to how, should I actually scale this to the Z? That should be on the same plane right there. It's where it kind of ends. Now here, let me show you how I can use the shape of a face that I have selected and use it to extrude new geometry. I'm going to extrude, but I'm not going to move it up and down. I'm going to cancel. And now what I want to do is scale it in place. Maybe scale it, this is the Y, a bit more here. And see how that is pulling the shape here, but it is still on the same plane. So I made that flat. It is all on the same plane. And now that I've got this selected, I can extrude a tang. This is called a tang if you watched Forge and Fire. Extrude the extension of the metal a little further. And now that I've got that tip just selected a little bit, Control plus will take whatever you have selected and add to the selection based on what it's connected to. So you can see it in action here as I hit Control plus multiple times, and it adds to it. And then Control minus will subtract from it based on where it considers something to be an edge. So if the edge is where there is connected but unselected geometry. Here this is connected, but it's all selected. So we subtract from the selection. And I want just now this tang part that I have selected. I'm going to scale in the every direction but Z a little bit more. Make it look like it's centered. Scale X. There we are. There we are. Now I've got a hidden tang on the Soul River blade. But let me look back at this view here. I can look at there is additional geometry here. So there's the edge that is beveled. And doing my smooth did a decent job of mapping where that should look, but I'm just going to adjust it by hand. And because I got the mirror modifier on, I know this will also apply to the other side as well. And we're just trying to make it match as best as we can to the source material. Okay, we have a nice rippling Flambert style blade here. All right. But there is more geometry, or there's more detail here that I might want to add physically to this model. And that is the ridge line here. This is not a fuller, this looks like more of an extension. So I'm going to Control R, and I'm going to cut down the middle twice. And I'm just going to leave it in place, right click. I don't need the tang's additional information selected. Sometimes the tool doesn't work and you have to do it manually. And now that I've got that selected, I'm going to scale the whole thing along the x-axis to just tighten it up. But I don't actually want that to work that way, do I? It's going to ruin the blade curvature a bit. I want them all a little bit closer. I think there's a relative scale I can do here. Alt S? No. Let me see what that does. Alt S. All right, Alt S scales in the direction of the normal of the surface that we have selected. So this is scaling out or scaling in. Maybe I could just do not Y. That doesn't work on this tool. All right. Sometimes that one's handy. So I can just scale Alt S and just pull it out a little more for a little more bevel, which is what I ultimately want here, but I just want to scale this now. I'm just going to have to do this one by hand. I can't do it all in one fancy tool or one operation. Just going to bring these a little closer together. And only in this plane. Notice these went up there, so grab Z. In fact, I can just scale them together at a time. So S scale will move everything you have selected toward its center or away from its center. So just by selecting them two at a time, they'll stay on the same plane since they are coplanar. At the same time, move closer to the center line, which is what I want. So it's still a little faster than just doing it by hand. And I don't have to worry about mapping or snapping it to a specific axis since it's just relative to where they already are. This is the fun part, doing tedious things over and over and over again. This class may not be as technically difficult as many of your others, but I can guarantee you it's going to be far more time consuming than you give it credit for. All right, I'm going to go into face select mode up here. And now what I want to do is I want to select this loop of faces. So I'm going to move my mouse between the edges that I want it to start selecting between. And I'm going to Alt select and get the whole ridge that we just made here up and down the whole thing. And once again, I actually don't want this selected. And I don't want that selected. I want just the outer faces. In fact, I don't even want the bottom face. Is there a bottom face? There is. Cool. Maybe I can Alt S now. Bring it a little bit like that. And I want to extrude now that up just a little bit more. And what I want to do is use my vertex. I go back to vertex mode and my vertex context menu to smooth my vertices. And that worked mostly. Didn't work completely. So I need to reposition these vertices. Center line. If you have a bunch of vertices on top of each other, try to use the context of what edge has a little bit of highlight to make sure you're highlighting the correct. No, it's these two I want to select. To make sure you're selecting the ones you actually intend to select and modify. And yes, now it is back to being a tedious process. I'm holding Shift and middle click to pan my view, and it's hold middle click without any modifiers to rotate the view. That cool thing about Blender is that with all its hotkeys, particularly the layout I use, it keeps my left hand very close to the home row where I'm comfortable from years of playing first-person shooters on a computer. So everything is centered around the ASDW side of the hotkeys. There we are. Sharpen the blade a bit. All right, so there's the blade of the Soul Reaver. Let's take a look at what it looks like in the camera view. Let's get the whole thing in frame. Grab ZZ to move the camera out. And I'm going to rotate around the 3D cursor. Put it in profile, and let's see what that looks like when I render it. Oh, that's terrible. So again, let's look at some lighting. Maybe give this one a little bit of color contrast. There we are. One thing I'll now note is that everything looks like it's made out of chipped plaster. All the edges are very rigid. There's something else that you should be aware of. It is how you want to shade the geometry. So without actually having to add more geometry, we can force the graphics card to draw it as if there were more geometry there. Instead of using the lighting calculations based on each plane based on its actual normal, what the we can tell the graphics renderer to smooth it out with an algorithm called Phong shading. That's P-H-O-N-G. I believe it's named after the computer scientist who came up with the algorithm. And you can see when I apply it. So let me go back into object edit mode with everything selected. And now I go to the face menu. And my context menu for the face, again here, or if you have the hotkey enabled, I can, where is the shade smooth? Now the shade smooth, you can see instantly, makes it look less rigid and more continuous. I have not actually added any geometry. I have not even added any more work for the computer to do. I'm just telling it to render it in a different way that makes it look smoother than it really is. Let me pull that back and go to shade flat, being the opposite of that. And once again, print. You can see individual faces very clearly in flat shade mode and smoother. They're all kind of blended together in smooth shade mode. Another trick to get more detail or more improved looks without any actual improved work on the GPU. Although right up here, there are some lines I want to be rigid. So maybe I can go and select some faces. And I want these to be flat. I just don't want the rest of it to be flat. Made it a slightly sharper edge there. Good. Hard to tell, but that's the case. All right, that's it for this little tutorial. Hope the additional tools have been helpful. I'll probably drop some notes in the Discord to give you a quick cheat sheet on the tools so that you can have a quick reference for that. In the next video, I'm going to go into a bit more modifiers and some more tools. All right, take care.